So this is Life on Wax with your boy Ted Jr. Of course, I got my special guest right now, Alana Woodson.
Mm-hmm.
Should I say that correctly? You don't want to mess
Thank you.
Alana Woodson. She's here to be on Life on Wax, and we're really glad to have her. Alana, say hey to everyone that's out there listening and watching. There it is. So Alana is on our show because I consider her to be a local legend. Of course, everybody on this show is determined to be a local legend, and that's not just a title; it's a challenge. We hope that you will take whatever you're doing and be legendary with that thing. And she's definitely someone that I think fits that bill. Everyone that comes on our show, remember, they always give us 5 songs. Yep, 5 songs that are special to them, motivate them, inspire them, or have some kind of importance in their life. And Alana, like many of our other guests, has given us some songs. I'm gonna tell you, Alana has probably the youngest person with the most old head, old school songs ever had on the show. And so we're gonna go through each of her songs. We're gonna learn a bit more about her specifically and some of the things that she's doing, and we're gonna have a good time. So, Alana, thanks again for being on the show. We want to thank you for that. And we're going to get into your first song here just in a second, okay?
Okay.
So the first song Alana has on her playlist is by the great group, Earth, Wind, and Fire. The song's called I'll Write a Song for You. Why did we have this song on your playlist?
So back in 2017, I was on the verge of getting really going with this film, but I had a lot of family loss between 2014 and 2017. And my uncle had just passed away. So between it, both of my grandmothers passed away. One aunt had passed away and my uncle passed away in the following year. Actually, this was 2016. In 2017, my aunt passed away. So my father's siblings and mother. And I was in graduate school during the time, and I really never allowed myself to grieve. I was a single mother for a long time. I got married in 2018, but I was a full-time graduate student, a single mom, and in my mind, I couldn't afford to grieve. And I was on my way home from class one night, and this song had came on the radio. But this song puts me back in a place of going to my grandmother's house for like family occasions. I can vividly remember the song being on the radio, going to my grandmother's house. And I had not heard that song in a long time. And I just broke down in the car.
Man,
I broke down something terrible in the car. And that was the first time that I actually physically allowed myself to grieve. So anytime I'm in a place where I feel a lot of built up tension, I play that song and it allows me to just release.
Yeah, that's one thing about music. It could definitely transport you to a time and place without you even realizing that it was going to happen. Yeah. So we're going to take a minute here, listen to a little bit of Earth, Wind, and Fire. I'll Write a Song for You. This is Life on Wax with your boy Ted Jr. and my special guest, Alana Woodson. Earth, Wind, and Fire, man, they are such a timeless group. And that music, boy, that music is timeless.
Very much so.
Now you said it took you back to a time with being with your grandmother. Yeah, and so is that just something that you heard a lot in her house, or was it just the feeling of it?
It's just the feeling. Like growing up, we didn't have a choice of what our parents put on the radio in the car, so it was always an old school station, and I hated it back then. But I heard it so much that it's ingrained in me now. But my grandmother, specifically the grandmother that grew up in Kinloch, when they were bought out, they moved to Ferguson, which was directly around the corner from our house. So we would always go over there, and whether it be a holiday or just in the summertime, and all of us were in the backyard and we had the radio playing, it's always like, that's one of the songs that it reminds me of. And I feel like the last time I heard I'll Write a Song for You was when I was over there. So it just triggered something in me that has not been touched in a very long time, and it just took me back.
Yeah, I feel that. So I understand that so your grandmother lived in Kinloch. That's where your roots come.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember. I think I read that that's kind of where you that's where you your family kind of grew up,
Mm-hmm.
and that's had an impact on the work that you're doing now.
Right.
So I want to talk a little bit about what you're doing with the Kinloch Dock and kind of how that came to be.
Okay.
So it was a couple years ago.
So my grandfather, actually, both my grandmother, my grandfather. My grandfather migrated from Tennessee, from Covington, Tennessee, and the story has it that he had a thing for white women. So he his life was threatened, and they told him, if you don't get up out of here, it ain't gonna be no more Richard B. So he came up to St. Louis and actually settled in the Black neighborhood that was in Brentwood.
Mm-hmm.
That is no longer there, and went off to war and then came back. So the Black settlement that he actually lived in when he first came here was in Brentwood. I just found that out from another elder in my family, but
Wow.
He ended up settling in Kinloch, met a woman, had 2 kids with her, and then ended up meeting my grandmother. So I have an aunt and an uncle. The uncle that I was telling you about who passed away, that reminded me of the song. That's my grandfather's first child.
Mm-hmm.
So by my grandmother, he had 4 more kids, and my dad is the youngest. Now he is the last surviving sibling of his direct siblings that came from my grandmother and my grandfather. My grandfather passed away in 1999.
Okay.
I wasn't interested in the story of Kinloch until far later. I wish I was interested in the story when all of them were still here, but now they're all deceased. But that kind of probed me to want to learn more about my upbringing and what brought my grandfather here and what it was like to grow up in Kinloch. Go ahead. You had a question?
Before you go into more of that,
mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit about Kinloch itself before you talk about your family connection to it?
Yeah. So unfortunately, I never got the opportunity to experience it. But from what my family has shared and the research that I've had, the city of Kinloch is Missouri's first Black incorporated city. It was one of the largest all Black communities in the country during this time. A high up of over 10,000 people that lived there. We had some of the greats that came out of Kinloch. So Maxine Waters, Jennifer Lewis, Dick Gregory, and Peoples. The first Black graduate out of St. Louis University was from Kinloch. Some of the state of Missouri's first Black superintendents, they came from the city of Kinloch. So we had a lot of firsts to come out of the city. Black entrepreneurship was the norm. The mom and pop shops, furniture stores, confectionery shops, funeral homes, taxi cabs, post office, library. Kinloch had everything but a bank. So you could walk out of your house, go down the street, get what you need, come back. They often said that they left their door unlocked at night. Your neighbors had permission to whoop you if you got crazy, because everybody was essentially family even if they weren't blood.
Mm-hmm.
The church was a stronghold in the community. There were dozens and dozens of churches. But those church members and community members and educators, they all played, a simultaneous role. So the lunch lady, may be an elder at the church or what have you. Everybody knew everybody, basically.
It's a real connected community.
It feels very foreign to where we are in 2020.
Come on.
That's how everybody describes how it was. And not to say that it didn't have its ills or its issues, but it was a very strong community, family-oriented place. And because it was always an impoverished community, so to speak, from what I've heard people share is that they didn't know they were poor until they left Kinloch, because everybody supported each other. So if one person lacked, they knew who to go to get what they needed.
And then they could just get other things they needed right there in the city.
In the city.
They didn't have to leave very often to do really anything.
Correct.
So yeah, I feel that, and I could imagine that was probably a great place to grow up. Did your grandmother or your parents ever talk about, or your dad, I guess, talk about what it was like growing up there?
Oh yeah, my dad. he always referenced like Kinlock Courts, the basketball court. It was like, you know, the court that's in New York that everybody goes to.
Yeah.
But that was like the Sunday evening thing. Like you had, you know, the gangsters on the other side of the court posted up on their cars, watching people play. And they kind of served as protection. Like when nightfall hit, it's like, all right, y'all need to get on up out of here, grab your ball and go home. But people would go to the court with their lawn chairs and they would surround the basketball court and, you know, watch people play. You walked to your friend's house and you walked to the store and you walked to school. It was the thing to just gather your friends as you walk by their house and go do what you need to do. He always talked about how my grandparents' house was the house to be at. And my grandpa would get so pissed because he get off work and it's 17 kids in his front yard and somebody then parked in his spot in the driveway and you know not to park in Richard B. parking spot. But they did it anyway. But yeah.
That's hilarious. I can imagine, man, because you know, I mean, I'm a young guy, but I didn't know when people are all in my parking space.
It's real talk. It's like, I don't care if you over here, just don't park in my spot. That's all I ask.
You know, that does speak to there being really institutions in that city. You said the church was a stronghold.
Very much.
That's a place that we all go and we congregate. The basketball court, that's an institution. It's a place where we go to congregate. We do our community stuff. But then your grandfather's house, I guess unofficially, was another one of those places. But there's probably other houses like his.
Definitely.
In the neighborhood.
Definitely. Man,
well, we'll talk a little more about that here in a second. But first, let's get into the second song in your playlist. And it's another one, another oldie but goodie. Is Happy Feeling.
Yes.
By Frankie Beverly and Maze.
The live version.
That is a bop. That is a jam. So what made you add this to your playlist? Happy Feeling.
This is my favorite song.
Wow.
This is my ultimate favorite song.
Was it the right one? The version that you...
The live version. Yeah. It's my mood up song when I'm not feeling well. It's my song I play in the morning to get through get started on my day. It literally makes me feel happy when I play Happy Feelings.
So it's something you listen to all the time, like every day, or
all the time? If not every day, every other day.
So I know some people who have songs like that. I understand they play it when they need it. When they need it. When's the last time you needed to listen to this song?
Oh, when COVID first started. when it first started, and it was kind of like, is this really gonna be bad? You know, we need to stay at home. And so now one of the things that I do, I go for a drive, 3 or 4 times a week. Just go up the highway. Don't really got to stop, but I'll play this song on my drive to keep me humble and understand, like, this too shall pass. Like, this does not dictate how I feel. This does not dictate what I do. And it's just a groove. It's a sunny day, nice weather, lightning bugs in the air, lemonade on the porch, groove.
Man, that's a good visual, man. Yeah. So let's go back to Kinlock a little bit.
Okay.
So you talked about your dad growing up there. And talked about how there were a lot of institutions, the church, the basketball courts, and how he really enjoyed growing up there, and also even how the neighborhood gangsters, I guess you could say, even really part of the community themselves, because they looked out for those that like the younger or whatever. So what you described in Kinlock is a real community that's really growing to major people. Maxine Waters, Jennifer Lewis, Dick Gregory. What? So that was then.
Yeah.
And you're growing up. I don't know until y'all moved to Ferguson. Did you spend time kind of in Kinlock during that time, or
honestly, no. So by the time that the airport really got deeply involved in the city of Kinloch, my dad had already graduated high school. So by this time, him and my mom were together. My mom is from Pruitt-Igoe.
Okay.
So yeah, him and my mom were together, and they
had
had
to go. They both went through some.
Yeah. They had an apartment off, I think it was the Sierra Vista Apartments off of a 367. So they were gone. And my dad is the youngest. So again, he was the last one out of the house. So it was just my grandmother and grandfather. But I believe they moved in 1988. I wasn't born until 1990. So by the time I came around, the house that they lived in was already plummeted and paved over. It was nothing but, dormant land by the time I came around. However, when I was born in 1990, my parents lived in Hazelwood, but it was right at the cusp of Berkeley. So Kinloch was technically about a 5 or 6 minute drive from the house that I grew up in, but he never took us over there. And then even in conversations now, when I would ask him about the city of Kinloch, he's like, Alana, I have no reason to go over there. Like everything that I knew was no longer there. I don't have a desire to be over there. So that to me explains why we weren't really over there. I never seen Kinloch until I was 20. And at that time, Keith Conway was the mayor, and they were on this whole Kinloch revitalization plan. They had built the Kinloch Historic District, where they redid the Holy Angels Church and turned it into the Cotton Club. And then it was this huge celebration. They had the Walk of Fame outside. I remember Jennifer Lewis was there. Maxine Waters was there. They took pictures in front of their plaque. And my dad was invited to come out and sing. My dad sings. So he was invited to come out and sing. And that was the first time I had ever been in Kinloch. So when we pulled up in there, I'm like, so this is where you grew up? Like what? Like there ain't nothing here. But of course it didn't look like that back in the 60s and 70s.
So if you can go back a little bit in the story, because you talked about the airport. Can you talk to my listeners a little bit about how the airport served to change the complexion? Can you speak to that a little bit?
So back in the early 80s, when Lambert Airport actually had hub status, it was the discussion was it was plans to expand their runways so they could essentially land 2 planes at one time, because it was speculated that we were just going to be this huge airport. And of course, Kinloch is right across the highway from the airport, along with Bridgeton and Berkeley and Ferguson, which were also municipalities that were impacted by the airport. So it was like a noise abatement program where it was a certain noise decibel level where when planes land, to them, it was just too much noise for humans to live in the house, to be so close to the airport. So they bought out several homes in the city of Kinloch, and a lot of those families ended up moving to adjacent parts of the city. So my grandparents were bought out and they moved to Ferguson. The city of Robertson, which was another all-Black community on the other side of Highway 170, much smaller than Kinloch, but they were completely wiped out. Completely. There was an all-white community in Bridgeton called Carrollton that was also 100% wiped out as well. But the thing about the parts that were bought out by the airport and wiped out, fast forward to 2020, the way that Kinloch looks now, no other part of the city that was bought out by the airport looks like Kinloch does.
Right. And we'll get into the next song, but then we'll get into why you decided to do this film, the Kinloch doc, which I'm excited about. I'm excited about because I recently learned a lot about what's happening in Kinloch from the program I'm part of, NLF. It made me learn a bunch about what's going on with Kinloch, and actually also made me want to do more research. As to what the hell is going on.
Pretty much. That's how it starts. Yes.
And so we'll talk about how that impacted your decision to start doing this film and tell this story.
Okay.
But we're gonna get into another song on your playlist here. Another good old. And this is actually the first time this group has been on my playlist ever.
Okay.
the stylistics.
Yes.
People Make the World Go Round, which is a great song, by the way.
Yes, it is.
By the way. But tell me why you wanted to make sure that they got on this particular playlist.
So the rough cut of my film, which is the first version of the final film, when I had my community screening back in February, this is how the movie starts with this song. It reminds me of the introduction of an old 90s gritty, TV show. And it just shows you clips about, the community and what happened to it and who's at fault. It took me to a place of like, this is how I want to start my film. Like, this is how I want to bring people in. And it, of course, it's already in my playlist, and it came on shuffle one day, and I just kept replaying it like, I want this song. I want this song. So thank you, Stylistics.
So as People Make the World Go Round by the Stylistics, of course, you're watching, listening to Life on Wax with your boy Ted Jr., my guest, Alana Woodson. So People Make the World Go Round. Like I said, it's a great song. And you say it's really the song that kicks off the documentary.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us, talk about what kicked off your plan for having this documentary.
Yeah. So man, where should I start? I try to condense it every time I tell, I put my little academic hat on. But basically, I have a background in media. My undergraduate degree is in communications. I went to school at Mizzou. And I thought I was going to go into public relations. But I also had a passion for service at the same time. So my major was in communications, but in undergrad, I also was doing a lot of research on like child support policies and single fatherhood advocacy work. I was a teen mom mentor. I had a daughter at 19 and she was with me when I was in college. So I was doing a lot of the service work, but I also had a heavy interest in media at the same time. When I graduated from Mizzou in 2012, I came back to St. Louis and I served in AmeriCorps for 2 years. I was a college advisor. I worked at Sodan High School, helping first-gen students, get to and stay in college. And my last year at Sodan was when Mike Brown was murdered. And I was at a point of trying to figure out what is it that I want to do? How can I support this cause? Like, this is really deeply impacting me. This is my last year at this school. Like, what is Alana going to do? So that's when I decided to go back to school to get my degree in social work. And it was in my graduate degree where I became interested in film work. So it's like, I'm in school for social work. I don't want to do direct practice. That's not my ministry. When I was in grad school, I also worked at the Father Support Center. I was a paralegal, so I worked in a legal clinic, as well as a social work at the same time, and was still doing teen parent mentoring. But I was like, I don't want to do this as a career. Like, I would rather volunteer my time doing this. And I was like, I don't want to manage a nonprofit. I don't want to oversee a nonprofit. It's like, I care about issues. Issues piss me off and I want to do something about it. But I also have a gift with the pen and something with the arts. And it wasn't until I took a class about systemic racism in East St. Louis with Dr. Jack Kirkland at WashU. And we spent a week in East St. Louis. And the first day of class, we took a bus tour. We started in East St. Louis and we crossed the river, came back over to St. Louis, and we stopped at different historic Black communities. Some are no longer here. So like Meacham Park and Mill Creek Valley. We stopped through Wellston. We stopped through Westland Acres and Kirkwood. And of course we stopped through Kinlock. So I'm in Kinlock and I'm like, I haven't seen this, in a long time. My family's from here, but I never really knew the full story about what happened other than the airport bought us out. Okay, but what does that mean? Right? What does that mean? So we leave class and I go back and I'm like, I wonder if anybody ever done a film on Kinlock. Couldn't find one. Still doing my research, and I posed the question on social media and was like, y'all know Kinlock is a first Black city in Missouri. How come nobody's ever done a documentary? And my friend was like, why don't you make one? I said, okay. And I literally went and just taught myself how to do film. This was in the fall of 2016. So by the time it became winter break, my dad has an older sister, a half sister, well, my aunt, who's 18 years older than him. And so I went to her because, of course, she knows a lot more than my dad. And I was like, could you help me out with this? Can you point me out to some people who would be willing to share? So between that and reaching out to people in the industry for coffee dates. And so I did like 3 or 4 months worth of informational interviews with people to kind of like guide me throughout this process. And then the first day I broke out a camera was April 15th, 2017. And everything up to that point, even now, has been self-taught.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So it was really just that you gaining that knowledge.
Yeah.
That sparked you to look back and create this film.
Mm-hmm.
And recognizing that there was something missing there.
Yeah.
So I know you call yourself a storyteller.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's dope. I think that's a great. I think that's a great way to kind of express who you are and what you're doing. So what's the story here that you're looking to tell with this doc?
It's a couple of different things. It's very personal to me. As I mentioned, I had a lot of family loss, so it's preserving the history of my family for the members who are still here and honoring the legacy of those who are no longer here. That is the one regret that I do have, is not spending time. I spent time with my elders, but not to the point where I probe them to understand where they came from, so I can understand where I'm coming from. And so that is something that I strongly encourage people within my age frame, millennials. If your elders are still alive, ask those questions. It's a lot that we don't know about ourselves, that we think, we just over here creating new stuff and we reinventing the wheel and not even knowing it. So to me, it was very therapeutic, and a lot of healing taking place, because I felt deeply connected to my elders. Even now on my computer, like, is a picture of my grandma. I keep her on my computer. And specifically for the city of Kinloch as a whole, I feel like a lot of people don't know that what Kinloch was. They don't know that it's actually still around. It's a lot of commentary about what actually happened. It's a lot of finger pointing about who did what, and just kind of to clear the air about what actually happened. Not to point blame or shift blame, but just for people to have an educated conversation around this city and how they're not at fault. And that's one thing that I see a lot of people saying, that Kinloch did this to themselves, and not really understanding the systemic, things that are in play, the policies that are in play that not only impacted Kinloch, but they've impacted Meacham Park and Mill Creek Valley, impacted Wellston, impacted North St. Louis, impacting, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Rosewood, Florida, Flint, Michigan. We are not the only community that has been impacted by corporate or governmental intervention. So for me, it's more so, if this is your community, if you have a Kinloch, if you live in a Kinloch somewhere, Nevada, I don't care. Is this something that is familiar or something that is going on in your community? How can you prevent it from happening? How can you armor yourself up with the tools to say, no, you cannot buy me out. I'm not moving. I paid off my house. You had people in Kinloch who were 50, 60 years old that didn't have a mortgage anymore. My grandparents didn't have a mortgage in Kinloch. They paid their house off, and they go to Ferguson at 60 years old and have to pay a mortgage. Like, that's crazy. The impact that it has on, grandchildren. What if we want to take over granny house? We can't. We can't. So the impact that it has for our lineage down the line is so much more than an airport buying out a city. It's way deeper than that. And I want people to understand how deep it can really get.
And I think the dope thing about you doing this documentary is that people like me, who also live in St. Louis and don't really know that Kinloch exists, because the way St. Louis County, specifically St. Louis County, but St. Louis as a whole is built, you don't really have to leave your little area.
Yeah.
And if you don't leave your area to see what's happening, the same thing can happen to you, and you don't realize that this is something that's been happening.
It's very fragmented, and we're naive to believe that because we're housing this one municipality, or because we live in St. Louis County and not the city, that it doesn't impact everybody in the region. And it does.
It does. It impacts us all.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I know when I went on my tour, and then I went back myself, I said I could not fathom that this was a bustling area at one point before.
Yeah, it looks nothing like that.
It's nothing like that now. So we'll I know next we want to talk a bit about your the Kickstarter and about your campaign to make sure that we can get your film up and out to the masses,
to the people.
And as soon as hopefully AMC will come back.
I know, my heart.
It made me sad, but
yeah.
But before we get into that, let's get into your next song.
Okay.
And we'll talk a little bit more about Kenlock when we come back. The next song you have is Bobby Womack.
Bobby Womack, the poet.
Bobby Womack,
the poet.
That's the way I feel about you. You said the poet. Tell us why.
That's what he was regarded as, the poet. Like Bobby Womack's story. It's a crazy story, but his music is just so sultry. And this song specifically, my dad played the CD all the time in his little blue Malibu. And summer days, he just posts up in the garage and just had his CD playing, and he'll have this song on repeat. And I just come outside and I sing it with him. So this and another song is like me and my dad's song.
Okay. Okay. Well, let's listen to Bobby Womack. That's where I feel about you. And we'll be right back with Alana Woodson, Life on Wax with Ted Jr., the poet.
The poet.
So this was you and your dad's song. Tell us more about that relationship. Anything more you want to tell us about that relationship?
So I am the only girl. I have an older brother and a younger brother, and I am more like my father than either one of my brothers are. My dad, as many father-daughter relationships over time and in your teenage years, of course we butted heads, but my dad is a great father, extremely supportive, sometimes overly supportive. Him and my mother, when I got pregnant at 19 and I had my daughter, they swarmed right in. And honestly, if it were not for them, I would not be a mother right now. So coming in and supporting, and we are the family that shows up to every football game, basketball game. Like, we're clowning in the bleachers. I have a very, very tight-knit family. And because my father is a musician and a singer, this is what I was raised around.
That's what's up. And it's all one thing that I love is when you know that your family has got your back.
Yes.
And that's really something that can help you go ahead and jump out there and take a real risk.
Yeah.
I can imagine, putting together, deciding to create a film and deciding that you'll be the one to do it with no formal training.
And it was a lot of question marks. I mean, at the time I'm in school for social work. It was like, you going to school for social work and you out here trying to be Ava DuVernay. Like, what's going on? And so I think even up until recently, like, they supported me, but it was like, Alana working on this Kenlock project. And then after I had the screening, it went from Alana working on this Kenlock project to, damn, Alana is a filmmaker. And I'm like, I've been trying to tell y'all this whole time. I've been trying to told you this whole time, but it's, it's okay. But they, throughout the duration of the process, and of course my dad is excited because that's his hometown. Right. But yeah, always been very supportive.
That's what's up, man. I wonder about your social work background and how that's helped in your filmmaking.
A lot.
Because I can imagine. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. When you talk about, I tell people all the time with film work, especially documentary film work, when you're interviewing people, 90% of the work that went into this film had to do with building trust. And that was specifically for people within Kenlock to trust me to come in with the camera and to share their stories. Like, it takes a lot to sit on camera and to be extremely vulnerable and open yourself up to people who may watch you on the screen and they, don't know you from Adam. They may misinterpret what you're saying. So interviewing people is a legit art, and social work taught me that it's a lot of active listening. It's a lot of, putting them at the center and having to work to remove my own bias that I may have with that person, not even knowing them. But just the art of interviewing alone, I got a lot of that from the social work school.
Well, I think that's That's key. And when you said that you were in social work, I really saw the connection. I wasn't really concerned about that so much. It makes sense because even I know what I do with this is just about being able to have a conversation with a person. And if you're in social work, that's a major piece of that.
And it's always getting down to the why. When you in social work and when you're working with clients, you know, they may say something and in the back of your mind, you're like, but that's not why. Like, I want you to dig deeper. I want you to probe deeper because we're just hitting the surface. And for me, I always want to know why. I'm always intrigued by the why.
So what I'm intrigued about, what I'm wondering about is what is a story that you can tell us that you heard real quick that surprised you or blew your mind or whatever. Just something a story that you heard from a person that was like, wow, I wasn't expecting to hear that kind of story.
In regards to the film?
Yeah.
Oh man, it was a couple.
I'll let you think about that for a second.
Okay.
And while you're thinking, we're gonna go into your next song.
Okay.
We'll play a little bit of Leandria Johnson, God Will Take Care of You. And when we come back, we'll talk about that song, we'll talk about that story, and we'll make sure we talk about the Kickstarter.
Okay.
About how we can support and like that. This is Life on Wax with Ted Jr. with my guest Alana Woodson. God Will Take Care of You, Leandria Johnson. Go ahead, girl. Go ahead. So that song, tell us about why you have that song in your playlist.
So as a woman of faith, I still have these running through my playlist. In addition to Happy Feelings, like when I need to recenter, when I need to recalibrate, this song by Leandria Johnson, whose voice is a ministry in and of itself. Like you cannot not listen to her and not feel the spirit like through her voice. But the song God Will Take Care of You is the constant reminder that regardless of what's going on, what you've been through, what you're probably going to go through, like you are rested in God's bosom, and it keeps me humble, and it just recenters me. It just recenters me,
which is necessary,
very much so.
Especially in those times, I would imagine of creating this film, stories, and I know it wasn't all just beautiful.
No,
there's low moments.
Yes.
There's times where you have to just believe and just have that faith. We're going to make it to that next step.
It was a lot of, especially because I don't have a formal background in filmmaking and being a Black female in media that's heavily saturated by white men. It was a lot of imposter syndrome that I dealt with of like, you know, what am I doing? I'm getting ahead of myself. Like, this is not, my lane. Who's going to support this? And every time I got to a point where I felt like I wanted to put the film down, God would just it's always some random, but it was the confirmation of like, Alana, I've put this into you. I don't call the qualified, I qualify to call. And so I honestly believe that doing the story and telling stories like this is a part of my calling.
All right. Speaking of stories, what was one story from the doc that you could tell, fairly quickly?
Yeah.
That people would say, "Oh man, I really need to make sure I see this doc because this story is amazing."
Oh, it's a couple, and even for some of the stories that didn't make it in the film, but just even in interviews. Of course, my dad, but he talked about a story where it was a rumor. Apparently, it's a rumor that a young man went into one of the diners that was really popular in Kinloch, and I believe this was Hal's Diner at the time. And the rumor was that the fries, Hal's Diner fries was so good, and so the young man goes to the diner and gets the fries, and he's not paying attention when he's coming out. He's eating the fries as he's crossing the street, and he gets hit by a trash truck driver. And the truck driver gets out of the car to check on the young man. And apparently the first thing the young man said was, "Where are my fries?" And so I don't know if it's true, but apparently that's the rumor. One of the rumors about Kinloch. And so I got to hear a lot of those stories from my dad. Actually, the first day of filming, which I can't even use this footage because the audio planes flying over every 5 minutes. I didn't know what I was doing, but it was a good moment. I had my dad and 5 of his childhood friends centered in Kinlock Court basketball before the courts got repaid. So this is when it was gravel, bullet shell cases on the ground. The nets wasn't even on the hoop, and they're centered around the court on lawn chairs, and they're, drinking Budweiser, and they got the basketball, and it's like they were 14 again.
Yeah.
And I got to capture that for myself. It's not in the film, but I got to capture that. And they're bringing up stories, and they haven't seen each other in a long time. And I'm glad that I was the person to actually bring that to life for them. So
tell us about this Kickstarter.
Kickstarter. So for those who do not know, Kickstarter is a crowdfunding / fundraising platform where people who create projects, it doesn't even have to be a film. It could be film. It could be board games. It could be a book, whatever you as an artist is creating and you are trying to build a community around. So you put your project on this platform and you rally people onto it to support it financially. And so it's not just donations, because when you use the term donation, I'm just giving you money. I'm not giving anything in return. So with Kickstarter, you have incentives. So you can put your money towards an incentive. So some of the incentives for this Kickstarter campaign is you could pay, a certain amount and you can get an entry into the St. Louis screening. Whenever we're allowed to go back outside and I finish the film, I plan to have a screening in St. Louis. So you can put money towards an incentive to come to the screening. You could get an archival photo package of old, black and white images from Kinlock, and I'll send that to you. You can just contribute financially if all you want is just to support the film. You can contribute funding towards a private dinner with me and the producer of the film to learn a little bit more about, what we're talking about, but in a more intimate level. So whatever it is that you may be interested in, you are getting something in return.
And what's your goal and where are you with that right now?
So right now, my goal is 20K, and that is to finish all of the remainder of post-production. So as I mentioned earlier, the song, the stylistics, people make the world go round. In order for me to keep that song, I have to pay for the rights to that song. I can't just keep it in there. And so if I want, to be more aesthetically pleasing, I have to pay for color grading, color correcting, and more archival imagery. If I need to go to the History Museum to find something, I have to pay for the rights to use that in my film. So it's a lot of stuff that I have to pay to cover. And right now I'm at 60% of my goal. So I've raised over 12 grand in just a little tomorrow will be 2 weeks since I've had the campaign. Wow. And I've raised 60%. So it's doing really, really well. But the thing about Kickstarter is all or nothing. If I don't meet my goal, I don't get any of it. I can get all the way up to $19,999. If somebody don't provide that dollar, I don't get any of it.
Wow. Well, we need to make sure we support that thing.
Thank you.
And and even in this time where things are tight, the reality is stories like this have to be told.
Agreed.
We have to make sure we find folks. If I gotta call the stylistics and tell them, hey, Tom and the crew.
Real talk. That is something that I'm doing as well. And it doesn't have to be a grandiose number. Like people have gone on and donated $5. And I appreciate that, because what $5 may mean to somebody else, it means a lot to me. Anybody who takes it into the heart to I want to support you, thank you. Thank you. Like there's no such thing as not enough. I appreciate all of it.
Amen. There it is. Well, God will take care of you and that campaign, I believe.
Yes,
now we've come to the end of the show, and with Alana Woodson. Now we do have the final 3 questions.
Okay.
That I ask every guest.
Okay.
And I don't ever give a heads up on the questions.
Oh Lord.
And so they can be tough, but I'm gonna ask you. I need you to give me some answers.
Okay.
All right. Now you are in charge of creating a collaborative song, a duo or duet, however you want to call it, with two artists of your choice. Who artists are you putting together to make the best song possible?
I would choose Phyllis Hyman if she was still alive. She's an honorable mention. She didn't make my list, but she's an honorable mention.
Gotcha.
I would choose Phyllis Hyman and Peebo Bryson.
Whoa. Oh, okay. Okay, Phyllis Hyman, Peebo Bryson. I got it. Okay. And Peebo he's got a history of making.
Listen, that buttery voice.
Yeah. You know, I used to have one of those. You know,
back in the.
Got my tennis elbow messed up. My
what?
So, second question: what is a song, an album, or artist that people that know you will be surprised to know that you love?
Ooh, a song, artist, or album that they would be surprised?
Yeah, people will say, "You like that?"
I think so. I create random playlists on my phone when I want to hear music, and I don't know if they will be surprised though.
Well, try it.
Maybe I listen to Maroon 5, which they got some soul in their songs too. So I don't know.
They're solid. They're solid.
Yeah, Adam. You know, he didn't probably dipped in the brown a few times in his life, but I love Maroon 5.
Okay, Maroon 5. I like them too. Adam Levine is a dope singer.
Yes, he is.
I got it. I give him all props. All right, now last question. You have tickets to one concert, and it could be in the forum or space that's best for you. One concert, and you can go see any artist, dead or alive. Who are you going to see?
Uncle Charlie. Charlie Wilson.
Man, that was fast. Okay, I got it.
And or Babyface.
No, ain't no.
Okay, it's Uncle Charlie because he's been here twice, and every time he comes, I'm not here, and I'm upset, and I'm gonna be highly pissed if we can't go back outside, and I've lived my life, and I have not seen Uncle Charlie.
Oh man, Uncle Charlie, come on back around.
Come bike, please.
Matter of fact, let's have you come to the screening.
Yes.
Kinlock Doc.
Oh yes.
And perform there.
That would be amazing, balls.
Yeah.
Oh, the Kinlockings will love it. They would love
there it is. So Alana, before you go, is there you want to drop some information so our people can make sure they know how to contact
you? So if they're trying to figure out where they can donate, they can go to the Kinlock Doc's website, which is www.thekinlock.doc.com, and there's a button that'll take them straight to the Kickstarter. My Instagram page at the Kinlock Doc, as well as the Facebook page at the Kinlock Doc. And if somebody wants to email me personally, it's thekinlockdoc@gmail.com.
Sounds good. Anything you want to say to our listeners before you go, just for the good, for their good?
I just remain encouraged, man. Whatever you need to do to make sure that your spirits stay afloat, do that. There's no point of reference that we can point to teach us how to get through this. You know, we're doing the best that we can with what we have. Just remain encouraged, love on your people, check on your people, stay prayed up, and wash your hands.
There it is. Well, I want to thank everybody for listening and watching. This is your boy Ted Jr. Right on Life on Wax. We have my special guest, Alana Woodson. Make sure you go on Spotify to see all previous episodes. Also, check out our playlists from the past 3 seasons now. Right there on Spotify. Also, just look for Life on Wax with Ted Jr. Thank y'all so much. Have a good one.
Thanks, Ted.
Thank you.